Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery preparing to check in on a couple of my older systems. In fact, besides the systems that we're checking in on today, that are 247 days of age, I've only got another pair of systems that are older, and they're only older by, a few days. And we checked in on those yesterday. They're the ones that are up there on the shelf, upper left in the black bins. So the ones we're checking in on today, second oldest, are over there next to them. These are red wigglers, a little different from the ones we checked in on yesterday, because those yesterday they were the original red wigglers. These are just plain old red wigglers, doing a great job in here, and we kind of ran them up to day 199 as regular composting bins, which at this point, since I'm distinguishing foraging from composting, the only difference is really the addition or suppression or withholding of bedding, and that's kind of the way I've been treating it. So they've, since that point in time when we started them into foraging, have been fed a number of times. And then in the case of these two systems, over the last couple check-ins at least, all they've gotten was coffee and worm chow. In the original red wiggler bins, I've been feeding just regular veggie scraps and stuff. No bedding there either, with these systems all foraging, but with these little guys, they've been getting coffee and worm chow, and they're going to get more of the same today. So I'm going to get a glove on, get those systems up onto the bench, and we're going to get started. Although I guess the informal rule that I've come up with to go hand in hand with this concept of fed foraging is that they don't get any bedding. But I think over to the other system, the other systems, the original red wigglers, where their fed foraging still provides them with a fair bit of paper-based type carbon food source if they need it or want it, in the form of old top covering papers that had already just gotten so chewed up and just destroyed, so they're no longer top covering worthy. They're just fragments of paper and stuff, but we've kept collecting them up and including them with the top coating feedings, whereas here we've been putting the coffee worm chow on and have a nice day. I am wondering if perhaps we can kind of be nice and maybe leave these coffee filters behind as sort of feeding zone indicators, keeping with tradition, and at the same time, if they do have like some sort of a dire need for any sort of like more carbon, I guess, then it's there, rather than it not being there should they need it. So I think what I just picked up and fragmented could have been a piece of corn cob. Just something about the way it falls apart. It just feels like it breaks across seams and stuff, like across certain little distances. Here we got the old pumpkin seed working its way down. This might be eggshell. Usually my eggshell goes into the worm bins in very minute size, screened down to make sure it is the right size, and then gets used as grit. So I'm not sure how big chunks of eggshell like that make their way into my systems sometimes. So, with the way we've been feeding out on the top surface, just sprinkling the coffee and worm chow out onto the top surface, I'm not sure what I'm looking for. Going for the center of the system, as if we had fed down there anytime recently with these top surface feedings. I guess it just means trying to spread the food out as much as I can throughout the whole system, rather than having it focused in one particular spot. And perhaps by doing so, I don't encourage the worms to mob together into one particular spot. I'm kind of encouraging them to do the opposite, which is to just be everywhere throughout the systems, assuming it's comfortable. And here, a pretty good example of it is what we're seeing over here is, good many worms hanging out down low, out at the very edges, because it's clearly comfortable enough for them. Even with the systems I checked in on yesterday, I was on the ready with my squirt bottle if we at any time felt like the moisture levels were lacking and that perhaps the addition of a little more moisture might be beneficial, but I didn't feel the need for it. in the check-in with yesterday's fed foraging systems, and I don't feel it here either. Feels like the systems have a good bit of weight to them. And I think my first indicators on that, as far as well, I gave away my train of thinking there, so I was really meant to say a good bit of moisture, not a good bit of weight. But for me, the early indicator is the weight of the system when I pick it up to bring it over to the bench. Right away, it's heavy, and if it's heavy, it's probably laden with a good bit of moisture, and that's pretty beneficial. In fact, it's almost necessary if you want to see what we're really looking for in these systems. I guess that last feeding, when foraging technically began, so the last feeding that I'm considering to have included a substantial amount of bedding material, included a type of bedding that leaves behind slow composting little fragments. These leaf stems are all signs of that last feeding that included a good bit of bedding. It was leafy matter, and that, for the most part, I would think that the leaves themselves have been chewed up, but these little stems of each leaf still linger. And in a way, in the past, I'd used the progress of the leaf stems as my indicator as to how close the system was to being ready for harvest. Here it seems like these systems still have a little ways to go before all of our leaf stems start to vanish. They're definitely making good progress though, and after a month and a half, not too surprising that they're still lingering. One of the main reasons in my older systems, I typically steer clear of using leaves that come with stems as bedding. I'd rather have some sort of a bedding that, gets consumed a little bit more rapidly, rather than stuff that leaves bits and pieces of slow composting stuff behind. So, I kind of like the idea of leaving the coffee filter for them, should they need it. I do wonder what type of a reaction it'll get, It'll be funny if it becomes the spot where all the worms come, because it's the only game in town for a nice big piece of, carbon food source. All this coffee that they're getting, all this worm chow that we're sprinkling in on top of it. This, I think, is more kind of in that category of foods that are on the nitrogen-rich end of the spectrum, and the coffee filters are totally just paper. And it's a little misleading to show that the feeding was applied in that shape. Let's do it this way. It kind of covers the entire feeding zone a little bit better. A little less representative of a feeding zone indicator that suggests a trench being dug down the middle, which is my typical mode. And even though it seems to me like there's plenty of moisture in here, I feel like I've got an excuse. I've got the excuse of wanting to leave the better part of this stuff stuck to my glove down in the worm bin, rather than taking it with me to the sink and rinsing it off. So we will give them just a little shot of moisture, almost as a collateral leftover of me just wanting to tidy up my gloves. So that's it for the check-in, everyone, with the now 247-day-old Red Wiggler worm bins foraging, doing really nice. In my mind, really just trying to tackle the last of the leaf stems that are still all over the place in both systems. And I'm not really in a rush, I've totally got time to let them work that stuff down at whatever pace it takes. But from what I could tell, they're doing a good job on it, and I don't think it's going to take all that long, I mean, some of these stems were quite large. They're hardly anything. They're toothpicks, if that, anymore. So, who knows? Pretty soon we'll probably start seeing evidence of these systems being ready for migration, and then we'll start trying to do that. So, in the meantime, we'll keep giving them these fed foraging feedings. I just like saying all those words with the F's in them. And that'll just keep them content and fed until such a time that we're satisfied with the condition of the material that they're living in, that we want to harvest it, and then we'll proceed to the next phase. So that's it for the video, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.